Hello there, welcome to this speaking lesson, which is about autobiographical narrative. In this lesson, we are going to see the meaning of autobiographical narrative. We will have some tips so you can narrate your personal narrative in a good way. And finally, we will have some examples and an exercise. Ready to go? Let's start. What is autobiographical narrative? In an autobiographical, which means personal narrative, you are telling a story about a noteworthy experience in your life. This type of assignment, usually used and told using first person, is about a single incident that made an impact in your life or taught you an important lesson that you can convey to your listeners. Pay particular attention to your characters, plot, setting, and climax. In addition, be sure to include description of the tension. What do I mean by tension? That is the events that create the interest in your work. Now, let's see some tips that will help you that you narrate your story in a good way. Concentrate on an angle that is not only important to you, but also is valuable enough to be shared. It's true, it's important for you, but is it important for the listeners also, so they come and listen to you? Now, for example, the story of your joy the first time you were behind the wheel driving a new car is very good and you want to remember it. It's something to remember, but this incident alone, is it also attractive for your listeners? Is it interesting as it is interesting for you? Isn't it boring for your listeners? Now, if you learned some valuable lesson that your listeners can relate to, such as how to drive within speed limits, or an amusing incident that listeners can be entertained by, such as how you met a movie star by accidentally crashing into his or her car on the freeway. In this case, then you have something you can develop into an autobiographical narrative. In this case, your listeners may listen to you and have fun. More tips. Start strong by hooking your audience with a great beginning. Engage them in the story. Use some dialogue. Set a scene. Start with an interesting or thought-provoking comment. Anything that leaves them wanting to know what will happen or what the story is about. Try to show the experience through your story and through your speaking. Don't just tell what happened. Give some background information briefly towards the beginning, only as much as necessary to understand the situation. So once you start, just a little background, then you can start your story. This will help your audience to understand and set the scene of the story and have a picture of it in their minds. The series of events should be in chronological order with transitions so that the story is easy to follow. Don't jump in events. Don't go forward, then go back again. This is confusing for your listeners. Just move step by step. Now, use sensory details, sights, sounds, colors. Use action and some dialogue. And be as descriptive as possible to set the scene. Use figurative language, similes, personification, metaphor. Your listeners should be able to picture the events and the story in their heads as they listen. So try to create a scene in their minds. Try to use precise action verbs. Now, instead of just saying somebody walked, you can say paced or lurched, moving left and right. And also end strong. Don't fall into the trap of summarizing everything you just said. So, after you finish your story, your tale, don't go back again and summarize what you have already said. It's not a report. Conclude with what you took away from the experience. How did it change you? How did it affect your character and the choices you made for future? And alike. A good personal narrative will affect whoever hears it in a similar way that it affected you. Consider showing your thoughts and feelings through interior monologue. What is interior monologue? What you say to yourself in your head as the events of your narrative unfold. So, when you are telling your story, try to tell the audience what you were thinking of, what feelings you experienced during that, for example, specific moment or specific incident. Let also the audience feel the way you were feeling. Now, of course, there are some more tips for a good speaker. When you are talking to your audience and telling your story, always remember these tips. Look at the people you are talking to, keep eye contact, use the right intonation, that is the ups and downs in your voice, and try to make your face expressive, and also don't forget to use your body language when you are moving your hands and body. That is very effective for your audience. And also remember to make sure that all your audience are listening and are comfortable, and try to involve them in your story, and try to make the story very interesting and make your people and audience interested as possible. And finally, relax, because you are telling a story to make them enjoy it. Now, how should you organize your speaking? Of course, you need an introduction. In this introduction, you may mention necessary background, as we earlier said that this background sets the story for the audience, and also give them a hint at meaning. This hint, of course, if you are telling the audience what the story is about right away from the introduction, they will not have this willing to listen to your story. Just give them a little hint and then let them wait for the story. Example for introduction. One afternoon in July, I was supposed to sail in some races with my best friend Mitchell, but the air was so thick and heavy that we decided not to go. We sat around his house all day, waiting for his brother to bring back the family powerboard so that we could water ski. Thinking back to that summer, I remember how frustrated and terrible we were. Note here that you are explaining how you were feeling that time. Our bottled up energy ready to explode. This is a very expressive sentence about how you were feeling. We roamed his house, searching for something, anything to do, but we only succeeded in making one mess after another and angering his mother. Finally, we hit on something. We were eating lunch on Mitchell's back porch when we both noticed his father's gun in a corner. Now, when you stop here, you pause here, your audience will be all ears waiting for what is coming next. Now, after the introduction, of course, you will move to the body. The body includes events. What is in the events? People, places. Remember to use emotional words, figurative language, and try to have lots of events. And finally, of course, you need conclusion. In this conclusion, try to have a reflection of the speaker, if it is you, and end with a direct statement of the significance of the experience. Because we said this is autobiographical narrative, there is a purpose for narrating such a story. It's to come up with a lesson or a goal, and you need to state clearly that goal at the end of the story. And here are some examples. This conclusion is for the same story of the introduction we just read earlier. The incident shocked me into thinking about the results of my actions. Mitchell and I were not inhuman monsters, determined to massacre baby birds. We were just bored kids looking for an adventure and not thinking about the consequences. I wonder how much unhappiness and even crime comes from young people acting selfishly and thoughtlessly out for a thrill. So here you are telling the audience what lesson you have learned from your story. If they had to see the suffering they cause, they would surely think harder before they act. Here is another example. Because of this event, so you see here, you start with the lesson you have learned from your story. Because of this event, I found myself with extra time on my hands. This opportunity made it possible for me to concentrate on pursuing university studies and my social work for unions. I enrolled at AU in the Labor Studies program. I am even more committed to fighting for social justice than I have been all along. So this is a comparison, how this event affected him, how different he became. And so powerful to move along this route in the future. So again, in this conclusion, the speaker shows how this story affected him and how he changed. We have now an exercise which is about softball. In this narrative, we have 5 paragraphs. The introduction is there for you, but the other 4 paragraphs are mixed up. Now we are going to read these paragraphs, and then after that you are going to find out the conclusion and the right order for the body. So let's read together. The introduction is, I was in gym class when my teacher suggested we go outside and play softball. So you notice here the first sentence, I was in gym class. Here you are introducing the place. When my teacher suggested we go outside and play football, as we made our way out to the field, my stomach slowly turned into a giant knot of fear. So by pausing here, you are making audience wait and listen. Why are you now afraid? So let's see the other paragraphs and try to find the conclusion. I was a hero to my classmates for the rest of the day, and I learned something. I may not always see the flying balls that come my way, but I can always take a chance and try to catch one. This is a paragraph. Let's see the next paragraph. My teammates gave me a glove and put me way out in left field. I didn't complain. I just wanted to make sure I knew when gym class ended so I wouldn't be left behind. Another paragraph. Nothing happened the first 3 innings. Well, things happened, but not in my little part of the softball field. I started daydreaming. The next thing I knew, I heard the sound of a ball whizzing through the air. I put up my glove to protect my head, and an amazing thing happened. I caught the ball in my glove. Not only did I catch the ball, but I also helped my team to win. The last paragraph is, softball is just not my game. I have a gift of always getting hit in the head by the ball. It doesn't matter where I'm standing. The ball just seems to find me. So, again, the introduction is there. Where is the conclusion? And remember, in the conclusion, you try to state what you have learned out of this experience. Of course, once after going through these paragraphs, you find out that this is the conclusion. Why? Because of this sentence, and I learned something. So, I was a hero to my classmates for the rest of the day, and I learned something. I may not always see the flying balls that come my way, but I can always take a chance and try to catch one. Now, we still have 3 paragraphs for the body, but they are still mixed. Try to quickly go through them and find the right order for them. Take a few seconds if you want. Okay, that's enough. Let's see. Which is the first paragraph? Yes, that's it, because you are explaining the fear that you introduced in the introduction. Next. Yeah, you stood away in the field. And finally, what happened and how you caught the ball. That is the right order. So that is all for today's lesson. But before you leave, remember the main points. Now, remember to have strong, attractive introduction. Remember to have strong language, so use figurative language, simile, personification. Try to have a strong ending, and in this ending, remember to state how effective the incident was in your life and include a reflection. Try to think how different you are now. That is all for today's lesson. I hope you learned something about this topic, which is autobiographical narrative. Wish you all the best. Goodbye.